Good afternoon. We're going to convene our council committee meetings for today, October 26, 2015. Our first meeting is Public Works, and I'll turn it over to Terry Horniman, our chair.
Thank you, Pinky. Joining me on committee today is Michael Lilliquist and Roxanne Murphy. We have two items before the committee. The first is a donation to Stonecrest Stormwater facility to the City of Bellingham. Ted?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Ted Carlson, Public Works Department. Council may recall a few months ago we had a similar issue. The situation is where residential development occurs in the UGA at the time under the county's development regulations. The county allows residential stormwater facilities to be maintained by the homeowners association. So in essence, the stormwater water quality and detention facility is a responsibility of the homeowners association for maintenance and ongoing upkeep. The city's requirements are that those come over to the City of Bellingham for ownership and maintenance, and the reason for that is we believe that that ensures proper maintenance, the best water quality, and ensures that the stormwater facility is properly maintained. Ultimately, all of the stormwater comes into the city's system, and the city is responsible for the management of that stormwater under our permit from Ecology. So before you today is another one of those facilities. It's up in the Iron Gate area off of Bakerview. It was a residential development. Stormwater facility is currently under the responsibility of the homeowners association, and they have requested that the city take it over for operation and maintenance. We believe that that is consistent with our practice and is the best resolution for proper water quality. It's a two-step process. First, council has to authorize staff to move forward with the environmental assessment. Essentially, we go out, do the due diligence on the property, make sure that it's in the proper condition to take it over, and also do testing to make sure that there's no environmental hazards before we take over property, which is our standard protocol. So that's the request before the council today. If you approve, we'll go out and do that analysis and then come back to council with a recommendation.
Okay. Roxanne?
Well, I'd just like to move that we proceed with the donation of Stonecrest Stormwater Facility to the City of Bellingham.
Okay. Michael?
I have a question. Last time we had something like this happen, it made sense to me that the city take over operation at the facility, but those two times they came forward with a significant price tag because they were neglected facilities. Do we believe this one is a neglected facilities that will require substantial investment, or is it in okay shape?
This one is actually in much better condition than the other two. It's a newer facility. It has been maintained to a much higher standard. The previous two were in a pretty advanced state of neglect when we took them over, so we don't anticipate nearly the cost that we incurred in the other two.
Okay, Michael?
What is our current practice? So I don't know how many of these kind of privately owned stormwater facilities are around. Are we going to be slowly inheriting them? Are we still creating them with new developments, or do we have a different procedure now? There's not very many of them remaining. So the procedure when development occurs within the city limits is the residential stormwater facilities are always dedicated to the city. They become part of our stormwater network, and we're responsible for operation and maintenance. Commercial, multifamily are different. Those remain privately maintained. The distinction for that is commercially managed property, multifamily facilities usually have professional management, and we're still responsible for inspecting those facilities, but the maintenance and operation remains with the property owner. Residential single-family subdivisions, those come over to the city. That's our current practice. Anything that's being built now is built to that standard, and all that is remaining now would be subdivisions that were built in the UGA under the county's requirements that once they're annexed to the city, then we would be pursuing taking those into the city's system. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, we've got a motion before us. All those in favor, answer aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay, we'll recommend approval to the full council tonight. The next item up is a presentation on the wastewater treatment plant biosolids.
Thank you. This item is for information only. We spent quite a bit of time over the last 3 or 4 years, even beyond that, talking with council about improvements at Post Point, and those have largely been around the secondary treatment process. And that was the major project that was just completed a year or so ago, or within the year, improving, updating the capacity of our secondary treatment at Post Point. What we'd like to talk with council a little bit today about is another component of the treatment process, which is our solids handling. It's not something we've spent as much time talking about. We still are in relatively good shape from a capacity perspective, but we certainly need to be planning for improvements when the time comes that we need to replace and update our solids handling process at Post Point. So we're going to go through a short presentation today. I'm going to turn it over to Rob Johnson, who is our superintendent of plants. He's responsible for both the water plant and the wastewater treatment plant, and he's going to run through a presentation, again, information only, and then we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Hi, I'm here today to provide council with the current state of solids handling at the Post Point wastewater treatment plant in preparation for a study to take a closer look at digestion, sludge drying, and combined heat and power generation. So the city provides collection and treatment services through 324 miles of wastewater collection pipe, 27 wastewater pump stations, and a plant down at Post Point. Over the years, the wastewater treatment plant has gone through several changes to meet the needs of the city. In 1973, we replaced the existing treatment plant located at Maritime Heritage Park and moved operations to the Post Point facility located in Fairhaven. Also in 1973, multiple hearth furnace number 1 was installed to incinerate biosolids, thermally reducing them to ash. In 1990, the Post Point facility was upgraded. The upgrade provided secondary treatment to meet new regulatory requirements. And in 1993, we installed multiple hearth furnace number 2 to add or increase capacity to incinerate the biosolids. And in 2014, the secondary treatment process was upgraded from a high purity oxygen to an air-activated sludge plant. During this time, no upgrades were added to the solids handling side of the plant. So here we have a flow diagram of the current solids handling process at Post Point. We take primary and waste activated sludge. We apply it to 2 gravity belt thickeners, which thicken it to a 6.8% solids, and deliver that to storage tanks. From the storage tanks, we pump the sludge into 2 centrifuges, which dewater it to 25% solids. Then we apply the sludge to 2 multi-hearth furnaces, which turn the sludge to ash. Multi-hearth furnace number 1 is 42 years old today. Multi-hearth furnace number 2 is 22 years old today, along with the gravity belt thickeners. So there's our solids handling at the Post Point facility. So biosolids handling at Post Point, the methods of handling biosolids have not changed since 1973. Incineration has proven reliable, and solids handling has served in addition to primary and secondary treatment in the past. The thickening equipment and incinerators are aging and beginning to increase in operational and maintenance cost. With that, let's take a look at capacity. The graph on the left is projected increases in biosolids generated from the primary and secondary process for planning years 2011 through 2035. The graph on the right is actual biosolids generated from 2008 to 2015. Both graphs are in pounds per hour. The dark blue on the graph is average annual. The tan is the maximum month. The green is peak week. The purple is peak 3-day, and the light blue is peak day. The 3, 7, and 30-day periods are the highest rolling average of solids generated over the course of a year. With both incinerators offline, we have about 2.5 days of storage with average annual flows. Also shown in the graph on the right, in 2012, we went to a 7-day-a-week operation to expand capacity in our solids handling process by adding 2 additional days that we would incinerate sludge. This also by doing this, we closed the gap between the peak day and the annual average. So that's why you'll see the decline in the graph. And also on the graph on the left is based on a 5-day-a-week operation. So, although reliable in the past and currently keeping up with our system demands, our solid handling and incinerators face limitations. The refractories, hearths, shell reinforcements, and the programmable logic controllers are showing signs of age and beginning to fail. The programmable logic controllers is a 22-year-old computer used to operate both the incinerators and is a single point of failure for both incinerators. The replacement parts for the incinerators are expensive and typically manufactured after an order is placed. As the incinerators begin to fail, they will limit redundancy and reduce reliability in solids handling. In terms of energy consumption, we have taken advantage of several opportunities at the plant to save energy, and with that, our current solids handling process remains the largest consumer of energy at Post Point. In 2016, we faced more stringent federal air regulations that make it more difficult to maintain permits for sewage sludge incinerators. So we did some evaluations, and here's some of the criteria we used. Economic. We want to ensure that the biosolids process is economically viable and should deliver efficient, effective, accountable municipal services, where we look at complete life cycle cost and include capital, operation, and maintenance. An environmentally responsible solution should meet permit requirements, reduce carbon footprint, and recover green energy, and where possible, reduce contributions to climate change. Social acceptance means that we provide an acceptable aesthetics, acoustical, and odor control solution to handle our solids, and we use transparent processes to involve stakeholders in our decisions. And also, for a technical standpoint, we want to evaluate solutions that use efficient and proven treatment techniques, and the system should be proven reliable, operator and maintenance friendly, and support the existing wastewater treatment operations. So we went through some assessments. In 2008, we completed a biosolids conversion technology evaluation. The main focus of this evaluation was on heat and energy recovery from our existing solids handling equipment. In 2009, we adopted the Comprehensive Sewer Plan, which recognized the need to further explore solids handling based on the age and condition of existing solids handling equipment. In 2010, the Biosolids Plan incorporated a 25-year planning period. The plan accomplished preliminary reviews of digestion and sludge drying, gasification, and incineration alternatives such as a fluidized bed. The plan recommended a 7-day-a-week operation to expand the capacity of the existing solids handling process. And the plan identified an increased risk of equipment failures beyond the year 2015. In 2011, the Facilities Planning Report highlighted deficiencies in solids handling. It recognized some of the limitations with system redundancy and emphasized the need to move forward with solids handling solution due to the aging infrastructure. In 2009, the Council approved strategic commitments and legacy statements. As part of a healthy environment, we want to develop a solution that will significantly reduce our carbon footprint. Another project goal is to create waste energy facility that produces green energy. And as part of a vibrant, sustainable economy, we want to study the viability of producing a product that could be marketed to create a revenue stream and potentially distribute the product within the local community. When it comes to quality and responsive city services, we want a design, a process that handles peak loading for a 25-year planning period and reflects a complete cost of ownership. So in 2012, we completed a solids handling business case analysis. So as part of the business case analysis, we assumed a 25-year planning period. We looked at continuing the use of the multiple hearth furnace and concluded that there is substantial risk due to the age and condition of the equipment. And current solids handling involves significant fossil fuel-based energy to operate and has the highest overall life cycle cost, and is the largest emitter of CO2 equivalents. The incinerator, we also considered the installation of a new fluidized bed incinerator option and this option limits the redundancy possibilities at Post Point. It has a similar life cycle cost to the digestion solution, and the air permitting issues are similar to the current multiple hearth furnaces. And finally, we looked at digestion and drying with cogeneration for heat and power production. This solution offers the lowest CO2 emissions and is the greenest alternative. Digestion has the easiest path for permitting requirements and has the potential to be a net producer of electricity. Digestion produces a valuable byproduct in the form of Class A solids and is recognized as a sustainable method of handling biosolids. We're going to take a look at an example of a digestion with heat and power generation. So here we have two digesters off-gas methane and deliver it to a combined heat and power facility, which provides heat for the digesters. The solids from the digesters are dewatered in a centrifuge and placed in a wet materials bin. Then a mixer mixes our centrifuge equipment or material with the recycled material and applies it to a drum dryer, which pelletizes and dries the sludge. Then delivers it to a precipitator where it helps remove moisture, and then delivers it to a vibrating screen for sorting. Large debris is crushed and sent back to the recycle bin along with fine material. And then the pelletized material is put on a pneumatic conveyor and helps cool it, where it's blown into a fertilizer silo or a fertilizer bagging facility. We are in the early phases of a project that is expected to take 8 to 10 years to fully develop. Any solution needs to be viable for 25 years after it's brought online, and we want to study the possibilities of moving away from landfilling and begin to use biosolids as a sustainable resource. At this point, we're keeping our options open and taking a closer look at anaerobic digestion and sludge drying with combined heat and power generation.
So that's a lot of information, a lot of technical information, but what we really want to do is start the conversation as we move forward in our planning for Post Point, as we look at future rate studies and we look at future capital facilities plans. Solids handling will be part of that discussion. And as Rob mentioned, from a capacity perspective, we're in good shape, and the city's done a good job, and the community's done a good job of source control and limiting the need for capacity projects. At the same time, the infrastructure is very old and becoming more and more challenging to operate. And so it may not be driven entirely by capacity, although that will be a component. It's being driven by the need for more reliable, energy efficient, environmentally friendly mechanical facilities down there. So it's a good discussion. This was information only. We're here to answer any questions, but we'll certainly be back in the future, as well as having more discussions with the community.
Michael?
I have toured the facility, and that multi-hearth incinerator is a giant fiery beast from a previous century. And I've been concerned. It's a pretty modern plant in most regards, except for that one phase of our waste handling. And I don't know exactly what the emissions are, but I know that earlier generations of incinerators release some pretty nasty things into the air, even if the ash is relatively neutral. So I'm all in support of us moving away from that older technology. As I'm understanding it, I don't know much about fluidized bed incinerator, but you mostly emphasize the digestion and drying, which seems that it may have benefits in terms of energy because of recovery and cogeneration on site. Reduced emissions, I would assume, presumably, since there's not an incineration going on, and also reduced disposal hazards, because the byproducts in many cases will be, valuable raw materials rather than hazardous waste. If I'm hearing that correctly, then I think it's very much in support of us retiring the old technology, moving that direction. If we can make that business case and find a way to responsibly make that transition.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We certainly need to do more analysis. In terms of the air quality, we are heavily regulated, so we have made significant improvements to emissions, and Rob can certainly speak more to that than I can. But although the hearths are very old, we've done quite a bit to improve the emissions to meet current air quality standards, but it is becoming more challenging. And the fluidized bed would certainly have some of the same concerns and challenges that the current incinerator does. So we'll go through the process just like we did with secondary. We'll go through a facilities planning process which considers all of the alternatives using the framework that council has provided in terms of your overarching policy direction, and go through and do the analysis on the various alternatives that are out there, and then have that discussion with the community and council as we move forward. Whatever we do will be expensive and certainly needs to be considered as part of the equation, and we need to be mindful of that as we look at our rates moving forward and other capital projects.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you. I am extremely supportive of the direction that Public Works wants to go. You probably all know that Whatcom County had the first anaerobic digester. Relative to what you described up there, it was pretty primitive. But everything that we hoped would happen with those digesters has. So I personally think it's a better option than incineration, and I hope that all the criteria that Ted's set out there will give you the motivation to go forward with this, because it's I believe, a really responsible thing to do.
Okay. Michael.
Just a short question on the time frame. When do you think you might have preliminary analysis that would come back to the council, and when might we be deciding? In a year and a half, in 6 months, in 10 years?
It's a great question. So as we're starting to narrow that focus down to, as part of our due diligence, we did include in the 2015 and 2016 budget funds in both years to pursue that. So we're starting, the next step is to get the RFP on the street, get a consultant on board, a technical consultant to help us do the evaluation. But would expect we might be back a year and a half time frame from now before we come back to council for more information. In terms of the decision point, that's probably the next rate study, which is 2017-2018 time frame, as we develop the next list of capital projects that will result in a change if we decide this that we want to go for solids handling down at Post Point. But this is going to be a multi-year, decade-long process to make a decision. There'll be lots of little decisions to make along the way. And they'll be largely driven through the budgeting process and the capital facilities project planning process.
Okay. Jack?
From what I remember from the 2007 or 2008 Climate Action Plan that the city passed, the incinerators were definitely by far the largest carbon contributors by the city into the atmosphere. And we had a discussion at that time of whether or not to go and shut down the incinerators or not, and unfortunately we chose not to at that time. But I'm glad that it's being brought up again. I would hope that you would, I guess, screen all of the best management practices and the alternatives that we have available to get whatever the best solution is. It seems like there's a lot of stuff out there in the industry, and whatever's out there that we would go and.
It's a good comment, Mr. Weiss, and that's what our intent is to do that, but we have to narrow it to some degree. And so at this point, what we're narrowing it to is a digestion process. Within that digestive process, there's lots of alternatives and different ways to go. So we're spending the next year and a half, and the dollars that were in the budget to explore that as a viable option. We're going to put the incineration and the fluidized bed in a holding pattern for the time being, and explore more of the options and the pros and cons, if you will, of the digestive process, as it seems to be the most viable for what we're trying to accomplish.
Does this include energy recovery too?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you for the presentation. This was information only.